Good afternoon, friends. I, on behalf of Beyond Law CLC, welcome you all in our endeavor to get knowledge from friends and speakers who are having knowledge which would actually enrich us during these times. In this pursuit, we got connected with Mr. A.S. Ravi, the District Judge, Tamil Nadu, who is presently posted at Coimbatore, and Mr. A.S. Raja, Senior Civil Judge, Vellore, who is working as a Principal Subordinate Judge, Vellore, Tamil Nadu. We found that both of them have been giving sessions so that the lawyers, the students, judicial officers, and the universities or those persons who are connected with law in one way or the another could be enlightened and enriched by their knowledge. The topic for today is different types of stay applications under CPC. When this topic was, yes, Raja. Yes, Raja. When Mr. Raja, you will have to unmute yourself. So, as any student of law or a lawyer would always know that the stay application is quite pertinent for one's career or for that matter for the client. Therefore, what could be the types of stay applications which can be filed under the CPC? These are the facets which will be unfolded, or what we say today would be unfolded by both of them. I would request Mr. A.S. Raja to first give the insights, then we will ask Mr. Ravi to take the lead forward. And we will also have both have kindly acceded to our request that they will also answer the question and answers session in the question and answer sessions. The questions can be posted after around 50 minutes. And we will take those questions so that we can have insights from both the learned speakers. Over to you, Mr. Raja.
Well, sir. Thank you, Mr. Vikas ji. Good evening, everybody. I really thank Mr. Vikas ji and the team Beyond Law CLC for giving this wonderful opportunity to us. Now we are in very difficult time. COVID-19 pandemic is spreading all over the country. However, in this difficult period, the team Beyond CLC started this journey, and it was just wonderful. And through this platform, we never let in COVID-19 virus or the lockdown even affect our thoughts and learning process. The webinar is useful and helpful, both the advocates and judges, and it is really very useful for us to share our knowledge with judges, senior advocates, and young advocates across the country. In the word stay safe is to wish our friends and relatives. But in civil procedure code, stay is not so safe word to all, but only to the person who obtains such favorable order from the court. Whether stay is safe, secure, guarded, protected, unharmed, or invoking low risk remedy is the question under CPC. In my view, if we know all the relevant provision in CPC for obtaining or opposing the stay application, we would not allow a wrong person to get such an order from the court by confusing the procedure, and we will also help the court to grant stay only to the right person. In my little experience, I read CPC several times and interestingly found different types of stay application in 19 places. Before going into the relevant provision, let us know the difference between the injunction and stay. What is injunction? Injunction is an order or degree of the court to direct someone to do or refrain from doing something. They are perpetual, mandatory, temporary, and ad interim injunction. Now, what is stay? Stay is an order forbidding someone action until an event occurs or the order is lifted. Further, stay can be granted only against an order in force which is passed by the court. In the decision reported in AIR 1967 Supreme Court, the Honorable Supreme Court of India held that in a case of injunction or stay, the knowledge of the party concerned and the court is necessary. It is further held in that decision, an order of injunction is generally issued to a party and it is forbidden from doing certain act. It is well settled that in such a case, the party must have knowledge of the injunction order before it could be penalized for disobeying it. Further, it is equally well settled that the injunction order not being addressed to the court, if the court proceeds in contravention of the injunction order, the proceedings are not a nullity. But in case of a stay order, as it is addressed to the court and prohibits it from proceeding further, as soon as the court has knowledge of the order, it is bound to obey it. And if it does not, it acts illegally, and all proceedings taken after the knowledge of the order would be nullity. Recently, as per the statistics, in view of the stay granted by the Honorable High Courts, several cases were pending in the subordinate judiciary, and it was brought to the notice of the Honorable Supreme Court. And in the case of Asian Resurfacing of Road Agency Private Limited and another versus CBI, reported in 2018 Supreme Court cases online, SC, page 310, the Honorable Supreme Court made a significant verdict by directing that in all pending cases where stay against proceedings of civil or criminal trial is operating, the same will come to an end on the expiry of 6 months from today, unless in an exceptional cases by a speaking order, such stay is extended. Next, we come to regarding the factor to be considered while granting stay. Recently, on 25/11/2019, in a writ appeal filed by the state of Mizoram in respect of a lottery case, the Honorable Supreme Court has outlined three aspects that usually consider while granting a stay order. Number one, there should be a prima facie case for granting the stay order. Number two, the balance of convenience does not favor the alleged violator. Number three, the stay order does not cause irreparable harm or injury. Thus, in all cases, while granting stay, the court have to consider prima facie case, balance of convenience, and the stay order does not cause irreparable harm or injury. Now, coming to today's subject, the topic which is allotted to us is powers of civil court in granting stay under CPC. Under CPC, civil court has got jurisdiction to grant stay in various circumstances. I got the relevant provisions. Number one, section 10 CPC, order 6, rule 14A, subclass 5, order 21, rule 26, order 21, rule 29, order 21, rule 53, order 21, rule 59, order 30, rule 2, order 32, rule 10, order 35, rule 3, order 37, rule 4, order 37, rule 5, order 41, rule 5, subclass 1, order 41, rule 5, subclass 2, order 41, rule 6, subclass 2, order 45, rule 11, order 45, rule 13, order 45, rule 14, subclass 2, order 46, rule 2, section 94E and section 151 CPC. For our reference, in order 8, rule 6, capital D, order 39, rule 1 CPC, and order 41, rule 3A of CPC, also the word stay has been used, but not for the purpose of filing an application. This topic may be new to the young advocates, but it is familiar to the senior advocates who are all practicing in the trial courts and appellate court. By the means of this lecture, our attempt is only to refresh our memory in stay related matters in CPC. With this introductory note, I pass on the mic to my brother, Mr. A.S. Ravi. He would explain various provision of stay application in CPC in detail. Thank you.
May I please, Mr. Vikas Ji?
Yeah, you can continue.
Yes. Good evening to all. At the outset, I would also like to congratulate Beyond Law CLC and Shobit Deemed University Meerut, particularly Mr. Vikash, for tirelessly conducting this wonderful webinar lecture series for legal empowerment, which is not only for the development of the juniors, but to the entire legal fraternity. I am wondering that the meaning of Vikash is development, hope, manifestation, and blooming. So nothing surprised that Mr. Vikas has taken initiatives in developing or discovering the law through this platform. I am proud and it is my pleasure to be with you and spend my time very valuably with this platform and also the August gathering. Thanks to Mr. Vikas for having chosen me and my brother to share our little thoughts on the subject today. My sincere thanks to my parents and my seniors, Mr. M.K. Rangarajan and Mr. M.K. Murli. Because of them, we are standing before you. Thanks to my brother A.S. Raja and other friends who motivated me to do this service to the younger generation. Bhagavan Krishna freezed or stayed all for some time while preaching Bhagavad Gita, except Arjuna. I think interestingly, this was the first Suomoto stay order. Another view was that Krishna stopped or stayed time while preaching. One another view was that Lord Krishna did not stop time, but delivered the message in a matter of few minutes, simply by awakening the subconscious mind of Arjuna. God always exists inside us as Paramatma. And here on the battlefield, he is instructing Arjuna personally as God. So all God had to do was to awaken the inner consciences of Arjuna so that Arjuna realizes who is driving his chariot. Once this is done, Arjuna will resume fighting on the instruction of Bhagavan. Though CPC is Gita for civil advocates, I am not Krishna and I am not going to preach CPC. So be free first. And don't be statue or in freeze mode or stay yourself. I am also not a professor, lecturer, best speaker, orator, writer, but a trial judge for 2 decades. Just I am going to share my little experience on the subject. Once this is done, you will resume filing or fighting with the stay application. One more aspect is that how Bhagavad Gita came to this world. We know that it is through Sanjayan, counselor of Guru King Dhritarashtra, who was not available in the battlefield, but was capable of hearing through his subconscious and convey to the world, to him, and then it came to the world. Likewise, all the stay applications in CPC has come to the legal fraternity in a consolidated manner. We are aware that there are provisions in CPC at various places. Now we have consolidated all the provisions through Beyond Law CLC, namely our Sanjayan. Today, I would like to outline the provisions which my brother listed out one by one. While turning the pages of Civil Procedure Code, I find section 10 is the first provision for stay. Interestingly, the word stay is available only in the subheading and not in the body of the provision. However, it starts with the word, no court shall proceed with the trial of any suit. Then what are the points to be keep it in mind? There must be 2 suits at the stage of trial in the same court or 2 different civil courts in India up to Supreme Court or courts established by central government. Both courts shall have jurisdiction to grant the relief claimed in both suits. It cannot apply to proceedings of other nature instituted under any other statute, namely before tribunal, writ proceedings, criminal proceedings, consumer court cases, etc. Issues in both suits must be directly or substantially the same. It must be between the same parties or litigating under the same title. What is litigating under the same title? If the one of the party died in pending litigation or prior to that, his legal representatives or subsequent purchaser or assignees has to proceed further. That is called litigating under the same title of the deceased. In such case, subsequent suit shall be stayed. Then what? Then let us see what is the object underlying under section 10. To avoid parallel trial on the same issues by two courts. Let us again, I'll repeat the words. The issues must be directly or substantially the same. Now, to avoid parallel trials on the same issues by two courts, to avoid recording conflicting finding on issues which are directly and substantially in issue in previously instituted suit, to prevent courts of concurrent jurisdiction from simultaneously trying two parallel suits between the same parties in respect of the same matter and issue. That are the objects of the section 10. Then now let us see the fundamental test to attract section 10. Whether on final decision being reached in the previous suit, such decision would operate as res judicata in the subsequent suit. This is the first test. Then number two, whether the whole subject matter in both suits is identical. If the 2 points have been considered by the courts, then we can avoid section 10 also. Then how to understand this section 10? There are 3 stages. Number 1, the stay can be granted only in the subsequent suit under section 10. The stay cannot be granted in the previous suit merely because the subsequent suit is filed under this section. Once a comprehensive suit is already filed, which is a previous suit, then subsequent suit for bare injunction can be stayed merely because the suit, the decree will be passed in the comprehensive suit will affect the subsequent suit filed also. That is why the stay cannot be granted in the previous suit merely because the subsequent suit is filed under this section. If previous suit is comprehensive suit and a new or subsequent suit is the bare injunction suit, then application of section 10 would be proper. If previous suit is bare injunction suit and the new subsequent suit is a comprehensive suit, then application of section 10 would be a farce. The key words in the section 2, again I'm repeating, the issues indirectly or directly or substantially in issue. National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences versus C. Parameshwara 2005, 2 SEC 256. It is held the elaborate discussion with regard to the directly and substantially issue. Then one more interesting case in Balbir Singh Vasu versus Lagbir Singh 2005, 12 SEC 755. A civil suit was filed challenging the execution of a will. Another proceedings was also filed for probate proceedings, which was filed subsequently. The Supreme Court held that the subsequently instituted proceedings could not conclude the probate proceedings. Hence, section 10 was not applicable. That is the, it is interesting case in respect of section 10. Then let us now move to order 6, rule 14A of rule 14A, sub rule 5, the next stay application. There is a procedure and practice to file a statement under this provision, namely order 6, rule 14, capital A verified statement to be filed by the plaintiff along with the plaintiff. Similarly, it is for the defendant to state his address in his written statement. If the court finds that the registered address filed by the parties are incomplete, false, fictitious, the court may either on its own motion or an application of the either party, if the address is falsely furnished by the plaintiff, suit to be stayed. If it is furnished by the defendant, defense to be struck off. After true address is furnished, the court may set aside the order of stay or order of struck off on the application of the respective parties. If the court satisfied that the party was prevented by a sufficient cause from filing the true address at the proper time, the court may suo motu also set aside the order with or without cost. Thus, we need not worry about the wrong address of the defendant while filing the plaint. That can be corrected at any time by filing a memo also. Then likewise, the defendant also can file his correct address at any time. If an application has been filed or it was put on to the notice of the court that the address is false or incomplete or fictitious, then the suit has to be stayed if filed, if furnished by the plaintiff, and the defense to be struck off if filed by the defendant. This is the rest of the provision. The court may also order directing the service of process at any other address if it thinks fixed. Thus, as soon as the fresh address is furnished, the court may order directing the parties to serve process to them. One citation I want to cite: Gagan Kakkar versus Dharampal Chabra, 22nd July 2015, a Delhi High Court citation to that point. Then the next provision is the very interesting provision, Order 21, Rule 26. This is the most misusing provision in the court, I feel. Before going to that detail into the provision, in Order 21, Rule 26, we may find a word, the court to which a decree has been sent for execution. What does it mean? The court to which a decree has been sent for execution. In short, a transferee court. A decree is forwarded to another court for execution. Then then section 38 says what are the courts which can execute the decree. Number one, by the court which passed the decree, we may call it as a trial court. Number two, by the court to which it is sent for execution under Order 21, Rule 5. When stay may be granted by the court to which a decree has been sent for execution under Order 21, Rule 26. If the two conditions: if certified copies are not furnished to the JD but furnished to the decree holder. Appeal time, though it has been furnished to the judgment debtor, appeal time has not been completed so far. In two such conditions, the stay application can be filed by the JD before the court to which a decree has been sent for execution. This is the two conditions. Then which court can grant stay? I have already said the court to which a decree has been sent under Order 21, Rule 5. Only in that court alone, stay application under Order 21, Rule 26 can be filed. Then which court cannot grant stay under Order 21, Rule 26? Then the contrary provision. Which court cannot grant? The court or tribunal which passed the decree, or the same court which is going to execute the decree. So, for example, the Coimbatore District Municipal Court passed a decree. The same court may also be an executing court. The decree need not be forwarded to the another court having jurisdiction to execute the decree where the JD is living or where the property is situated. In such condition, the court which passed the decree is going to execute the decree. It cannot grant stay under this provision, Order 21, Rule 26. That has to be noted. Then, what is the remedy for the JD to get stay against whom contested decree is passed? Now the execution proceedings has been filed. Then what is the remedy for the JD? Number one, he can approach the court which passed the decree under Order 41, Rule 5, Sub Rule 2 to get stay, stating that I have not obtained certificate copies, or though I have not obtained certificate copies, appeal time has not been completed so far. Before that, a decree has been executed by the decree holder. In such condition, this application can be filed. Then the second application, a certificate copy has been received. He may approach the appellate court under Order 41, Rule 5, Sub Rule 1 to get stay. Under these two provisions only, a JD can obtain stay when the decree has not been transmitted. Then next provision, next one is what is the remedy of the JD to get stay against whom ex parte decree is passed? Ex parte decree, when ex parte decree is passed, the only remedy available to the JD is to approach the trial court which passed the such ex parte decree. He may file an application under Order 9, Rule 13 CPC, or he may file application under Order 9, Rule 13 CPC along with Section 5 application. Thus, the JD cannot file an application before the executing court under Order 21, Rule 26 of CPC, as it is not yet transferee court. Then I'll explain four stages where the stay applications can be filed by the judgment debtor. Number one, stay of operation of the decree on the date of pronouncement of the judgment. As soon as judgment is pronounced, if you are in possession of the property, to retain the possession, you may file an application in the same court even without obtaining the certificate copy of the decree. You may file an application before the same court under Order 41, Rule 5, Sub Rule 2 for the stay of operation of the decree. When such application is filed and you are able to get a stay order in the trial court itself, the decree holder cannot file execution proceedings. Thus, till copies are furnished, this application is maintainable. Number two, stay of operation of the first point which I have referred, you can compare with the provision under CRPC also, 389 sub rule 3, stay of suspension of the sentence. Immediately, as soon as judgment is pronounced, convicted, and the sentence is passed, an application can be filed stating that he is going to prefer appeal and he is on bail. That application is maintainable if sentence is below up to 3 years. The similar application in CPC and civil cases. Then second application, stay of operation of the decree after obtaining copies only before the appellate court. As soon as copies are obtained, you have to approach the appellate court, not the trial court, for getting stay of the operation of the decree. Number three, stay of execution. If copies are not furnished to the JD, then he may file an application. The court to which decree, if the decree is sent to some other court for execution, then he can file application. If the decree is not sent for execution to any other court, he cannot file application. He get only two remedies allowed. No stay application is maintainable before the trial court come executing court which passed the decree. These are the four conditions to be keep it in mind while filing the stay application or defending the stay application, or if the junior advocates or junior judicial officers are there, they have to see when the stay has to be granted. Since the parties are misusing the provision under Order 21 Rule 26 by getting stay, which is in which the decree has not been forwarded to other court. The court which is executing the court is also the court which passed the decree, but such type of applications are being filed. Then I will also give you a chart for easy understanding of Order 21 Rule 26, Order 41 Rule 5, when Order 9 Rule 9, Order 9 Rule 13 CPC to be filed, when appeal to be filed, and the chart I will furnish after the session is over to Mr. Vikash. And I think this will be useful to the juniors to follow, namely when, where, how, and under which provision an application shall be filed for stay. You may also note few citations on this point, which I am not going to elaborate. K. Lakshmi Ammal versus D.S. Nagalakshmi on the points which I have covered so far. A. Devarajan versus Tulasi Mani, G. Arumugam versus P. Jayaraman, then R. Sendil Kumar versus S. Ayyalusamy, G. Suresh Mohan versus S. Lilly, and the last one, Hotel Supreme Private Limited versus P. Kannan. In all those citations, these points have been elaborately discussed. We need not go into details of the said citations. Then the next provision is Order 21 Rule 29 of CPC. To stay the execution of decree in the following conditions must be satisfied under Order 21 Rule 29. There must be simultaneous proceedings. An execution proceedings initiated by the decree holder must be pending against the JD, and JD must have filed a suit against decree holder. Watch carefully. Yes, execution proceedings has been filed by the decree holder against JD, which is pending. JD filed a suit against the decree holder, which is also pending. In such a condition, a stay application can be filed before the executing court, stating that suit has to be stayed till the execution proceedings are completed. I'm sorry, the stay application has to be filed by the decree holder to stay the suit filed by the judgment debtor. This is the point to be learned. Then three more citations on this point. Shaukat Hussain versus Bhuvaneshwari Devi, 1972 SEC 731. Usha Chinha versus Dita Ram, AR 2008 Supreme Court 1927. Balammal versus Mutiyar Begum, 2012 22nd November. India Kanun link I have provided in the list also. And this is very simple provision, it's a very rare provision also. Then the next, let us move on to Order 21 Rule 53, attachment of decrees. There are two divisions in the provision. Number one, decree for the payment of money or for sale in enforcement of a mortgage or charge. Number two, other decrees. Those decrees we are going to attach under Order 21 Rule 53. Now, assuming that A filed, just a moment. Assuming that A filed an execution proceedings against B. B filed an execution proceedings against C in the same court. There are two execution proceedings, one filed by A against B, second filed by B against C. Then A can file an application to attach the decree of B, which was obtained by B against C under this provision. Then another example, it is not pending in the same court. If A filed an execution proceedings against B in Coimbatore and B filed an execution proceedings against C in Meerut, then A can file an application to attach the decree which was obtained by B against C, which is pending in Meerut court. In such a case, after attachment, a notice will be sent to court at Meerut to stay the proceedings initiated by B against C. As soon as notice is received by the court at Meerut, shall stay the proceedings under Order 21 Rule 53. There are two conditions I have explained. One, both execution applications pending before the same court. Number two execution applications pending in different two courts. And what is the procedure to be followed? If it is pending in the same court can attach the decree of the BJD. If it is not pending in the same court, after attachment, a notice shall be sent forwarded to the court at Meerut, and as soon as it is received, the Meerut court has to attach the decree. This is the meaning of Order 21 Rule 53. Then now the question is how to vacate the stay order that was granted by Coimbatore court and executed at Meerut court. How to vacate the stay order? When the court at Coimbatore cancels the notice, the stay will be vacated. When the decree holder applies to the court at Meerut that the stay may be vacated, then it can be vacated. When a JD by producing the permission of the Coimbatore court and applies to the court at Meerut, then also it can be vacated. When the JD by obtaining permission of the Coimbatore court return with the written consent of the decree holder, then he may also apply to the court at Meerut for the vacating the said provision. When the court which passed the decree is different from the court whose decree is to be attached, a notice to be sent by the court which passed the decree to the court to which has been sent for execution to stay the execution of the decree. This is the point to be understand. Two citations I want to cite. Mahalingam Chettiar versus Ramanathan Chettiar, AR 1940, Privy Council 173, and firm Dio Chand Pannalal and others versus Shubhakaran Shivdio G, AR 1957, Madhya Pradesh 9. The next provision is Order 21 Rule 59, stay of sale. If before claim application is filed, this execution proceedings is pending, it is posted for sale of the immovable property of the JD. At that time, a claim application has been filed in the before the executing court. If before claim application is filed, the attached property has already been advertised for sale, namely proclamation. Proclamation has been effected. It is the property has been advertised for sale. If it is a movable property, make an order postponing the sale. Postponing the sale if it is movable property. Then if it is a immovable property, what is the procedure we follow? Make an order that the property shall not be sold or may be sold, but the sale shall not be confirmed. For number one, sale should not, property shall not be sold. That can be a one type of order, or maybe sold, but sale shall not be confirmed. Obviously, this has been made with a view to expedite the sale proceedings, so that in the event of the claim application being rejected, the further proceedings can go on expeditiously. That was the object of this provision. Such a words has been included. The sale can be held, the property can be sold, and sale shall not be confirmed. Once the claim petition is allowed, the sale will be treated as void, because the interest of the JD that was sold did not in fact belong to him. That is why claim application has been allowed. The property does not belong to the judgment debtor. Claim application, the property belongs to the claim application, has been held by the court, and in such a condition, the court auction purchaser would not get any title to the property, as the JD has no interest therein, and because the claim continues to retain his interest in those property. Then what will be the remedy to the court auction purchaser? If he purchased the property, he will get back the amount along with the poundage amount.
Mr. Ravi, everyone is saying kindly go slightly slow.
Oh, sorry.
So for me, it is understandable, but some people have, around 5 people have posted
Again,
on the web.
Again, I want to repeat any one of the provisions.
No, they were saying just go slow that they can follow up for the notes.
Sure. Sorry.
Yeah.
Then
because I am able to understand, but some people are writing that kindly go slow.
That is my
Speed
nature.
slow.
That is
not,
my nature.
Not the volume, but the speed.
Yes. One citation I want to cite: Kancharla Lakshmi Narayana versus Mattaparthi Shyamala and others, 14th March 2008. A link I have provided in the notes also. Then the next provision is Order 30. Suits by or against firms and persons carrying on business in names, in which Order 30 Rule 2 deals with stay application. What is Order 30 Rule 2? Disclosure of partners' names. Where a suit is instituted by partners in the name of their firm, he shall declare in writing the names and the places of residence of all the partners. If he failed to furnish, the suit has to be stayed until it is furnished. See, now let us see one by one. In a suit by the firm or against the firm, two provisions we have to keep it in mind. Number one, section 69(2) of Partnership Act. Under the said provision, a firm shall be registered. The firm means a name of the firm. For example, Ravi and his brother, or Ravi and his brother company, or Ravi and his partners. Likewise, the firm name to be registered. While submitting an application for registration of firm, all the names and details of the partners has to be given to the said registration department, firm registration department. Then that firm to be registered, again, the partnership deed need not be registered. This is the difference. Under section 69(2), firm to be registered, partnership deed between the partners need not be registered. If you fail to register the firm, subsequent registration cannot cure the defect. If a suit has been filed without registering the firm, the subsequent registration cannot cure the defect. Number one. The objection regarding non-registration has to be specifically pleaded by the defendant. Defendant has to plead that the firm has not been registered, so the suit filed in the name of the name of the firm is not maintainable. Once pleaded, it is incumbent on the plaintiff to prove the same, and failure is fatal. If non-registration is not specifically pleaded, no evidence can be let in for the plea not raised. The objection regarding non-registration can be waived. The defendant can waive the such plea also, unless the waiver of the right or the absence of the right makes any particular matter illegal, or where the benefit is conferred by a statute which has public policy for its object. Number 4, such waiver can be expressed or be inferred from the facts and the circumstances of the case. Thus, the 2 points and the pleadings has to be keep it in mind while filing or defending the suits filed by or again suit filed against the firm. If the then another point is, if the suit is validly instituted by or on behalf of the firm against any third party, 2 conditions must be fulfilled. The suit is filed not against between partners, it is filed against third party. If number 1, the firm is registered. Number 2, the person suing or have been shown the register of firms as partners in the firm. That is the order 30 rule 1. If such conditions are not fulfilled, then under order 30 rule 2, a stay application can be maintainable. The scope and ambit of the provisions of rule 1 and 2 of order 30 of CPC is different from section 69(2) of Partnership Act. You have to differentiate both the provisions. I have detailedly explained. Then another one is these rules, namely order 30 rule 1 and 2, are procedural in nature. The provision under section 69(2) are substantive and create a bar at the threshold of filing of the suit by or on behalf of the firm. If the condition mentioned, I have said 2 conditions. Conditions mentioned therein are not fulfilled. That is the another point to be bear in mind. Then next one is the question of applicability of the provisions under rule 1 and 2 of order 30 arises only if suit itself is validly instituted in compliance with the provision of CPC. 2 citations, one citation on this aspect. Sri Balaji Traders, represented by its partners, versus United National Insurance Company Limited, 2005 CTC 267. You may also go through that citation. Then another interesting point, when 69(2) or registration firm is when not necessary. I have said earlier it is necessary when it is not necessary. If the suit is not filed on the basis of any right arising out of the contract and the suit is filed for common law remedy, for example, a remedy for recovery of possession after termination of the lease, agreement by efflux of time, suit in respect of nuisance against a third party. In such type of suits, section 69(2) of Partnership Act or registration of firm is not a bar. It is categorically held in SB Steels Industries versus Indra Re-Rolling Mills Limited case law. Then one more point is also Honorable Madras Honorable High Court Madras took a view that Order 30 Rule 10 of CPC is applicable to individual also. We have already seen the chapter Order 30 relates to suits by and against partnership firms. Honorable Madras High Court took a view that it is applicable to individual also when who carried on business in an assumed or trading name, though there is no partnership firm. An individual is running a company, but under the name and style of partnership firm, those so and so partners or so and so firm, etc. Likewise, he is doing business. Then in such a plaintiff may also use these provisions under Order 30 Rule 10. Then the individual doing business in the name and style of firm. That is the point to be understand. Rashpal Malhotra versus Satya Rajput and another, 1987 AR Supreme Court 2235, in which also that point has been clarified that if when an individual doing business in the name and style of a firm can also apply, can also use Order 30 provisions, which is exclusively available for the partnership firms. Then next provision is Order 32 Rule 10. You are, I think you are all aware that if a minor is a plaintiff or a petitioner or an appellant who has to be represented by a next friend under Order 32, Rule 1. And here in Tamil Nadu, under rules of practice, Rule 111, a third party affidavit to be filed. I'm not aware of the in respect of other states. A separate affidavit to be filed, not application, an affidavit to be filed by the third party declaring or stating that the next friend will take care of the minor and his property. If the defendant or respondent is a minor, who has to be represented by his guardian under Order 32, Rule 3. On retirement or removal or death of the next friend. Again, next friend means plaintiff, petitioner, and appellant, not the respondent, defendant, or opposite party. On retirement of removal, retirement, or death of the next friend of a minor, further proceedings shall be stayed until the appointment of a next friend in the place of minor, plaintiff, or appellant, or petitioner. That is the provision under Order 32, Rule 10. The suit shall be stayed. 2 points to be understood through this provision. Number one, this rule is attracted only when the fact of death is brought to the notice of the court. If that was not brought to the knowledge of the court, we cannot stay the proceedings. The fact of death has to be brought to the knowledge of the court. If no next friend is appointed, when suit is pending, and cannot abate until 3 years after the minor attains majority. See, the suit cannot be abated merely because no subsequent next friend has been represented by the representative for the minor. In such a condition, after attaining majority, the suit still not abated. That is the provision under Order 32, Rule 10. Then let us move on to Order 35, interpleader suits. Interpleader means between the litigation or dispute between the defendants, not plaintiffs, between the defendants. An interpleader suit is one in which the real controversy or dispute is not between the plaintiff and the defendants, but it is rather between the defendants only who interplead against each other. That is the meaning of interpleader suit. For example, I'll say one example to understand the interpleader suit and how Order 35, Rule 3 has to be applied. For example, where a suit was an interpleader suit brought by the tenants to ascertain whether they had to pay rent to son or daughter or wife of their landlord, namely the deceased landlord. The suit in such a suit is pending, which is filed by the tenants against the legal representatives of the deceased landlord. Another suit filed by a son of the deceased landlord against the tenants, seeking direction from the court to direct him to pay rent to him only. The said suit has to be stayed, not the suit filed by the tenant against all the legal representatives. The stay has to be granted in the suit filed by a son against the tenants seeking payment of rent. That has to be stayed. The reason is if the dispute between the interpreters are resolved, then the subsequent suit filed by the son of the deceased landlord has no value at all. Then what is the remedy for the tenants who filed a interpleader suit? They will get only the cost. No, they will not get any other remedy in that suit. They will get only cost of the suit which they filed against the legal representatives. The court, while decreeing the interpleader suit, also include the cost of the tenant, or he may add his cost in the interpleader suit itself. That is the points to be understood under this provision. Then next chapter is Order 37, summary procedure. Order 37, Rule 4 says, power to set aside the decree. When a decree has been set aside in a summary procedure suit, the court may stay the execution proceedings or set aside the execution and give leave to the defendant to defend the suit. Like for example, a suit has been filed by the plaintiff against the defendant under summary procedure. As soon as a notice has been received by the defendant in such a suit, he has to approach the said court within 10 days from the date of receipt of notice and file an application seeking leave from the court to defend the suit. Not like other money suits, he cannot straight away file his written statement. He has to state the defense in the application and state the seek an application to leave of the court to defend the case. If after receiving the summon, if he has not filed such application and he was set ex parte, then the execution proceedings has been initiated by the decree holder. Then subsequently, he filed an application to set aside the ex parte order, and if it was allowed, then the court has to stay the execution proceedings filed by the decree holder based on the ex parte decree, or set aside the execution if any orders are passed in the execution. The court has to set aside the order. That is the provision under Order 37 Rule 4 to stay the execution proceedings when the JD obtained an order setting aside the ex parte passed against him. The power under Order 37 Rule 4 is not confined to setting aside the ex parte decree. It extends to staying or setting aside the execution and giving leave to appear to the summons and to defend the suit. That is the meaning of that provision under stay application. Rajini Kumar versus Suresh Kumar Malhotra, AR 2003, Supreme Court, 1322 is the apt citation in respect of that provision. Then one more stay application in the same chapter itself, Order 37 Rule 5. In any proceedings under this chapter, order of the court may order the bill, hundi, or note on which the suit is found to be forthwith deposited with an officer of the court, and may further order that all proceedings shall be stayed until plaintiff gives security for the cost thereof. That is the provision under Order 37 Rule 5. The two conditions: the plaintiff shall deposit bill or hundi or note on which the suit is based on is filed. If he failed to deposit the said document or give security for the cost thereof, all the proceedings initiated by him under this chapter, namely summary procedure, shall be stayed. Then let us move on to Order 41, appeals from original decrees. Under Order 41 Rule 5, stay can be granted by appellate court. That is the subheading in the provision. But when you read the provision, two courts can grant stay. I'll explain one by one. Under Rule 5, under 41 Rule 5.1, stay by appellate court. If an execution proceedings has been initiated by the decree holder based on the decree obtained by him against the JD, the JD may prefer an appeal under Order 41 and also file an application under Order 41 Rule 5.1 for stay. The law is settled. Mere pendency of appeal does not operate as stay. It is the settled law under this provision. Thus, the appellate court may grant or may not grant stay when an application is being filed by the judgment debtor. Under Order 41 Rule 5 Subrule 2, an application can be filed before the trial court which passed the decree, not executing court. Again, I'm repeating, it is not executing court. On the trial side, that application has to be filed, and not on the execution side, even though the same court is executing the decree, maybe a trial court. Under Order 41, Rule 5, Sub Rule 2, stay by the court which passed the decree. He can file an application. We have already covered that provision under Order 21, Rule 26 also. Under 2 stages, when copy has not been furnished to the JD but furnished to the decree holder who filed the execution proceedings. Then number 2, copy has been furnished to the JD, but appeal time has not been completed. He has been contacting his counsel, etc., and other reasons also. Then he has to approach the trial court since the appeal time has not been completed. If appeal time is completed, the stay application cannot be filed before the trial court or the court which passed the decree. He has to approach only the appellate court. Then Sub Rule 3, Order 41, Rule 5, Sub Rule 3. While granting stay, both courts, not only the appellate court or the trial court, both court has to see whether any substantial injury may result if not granted. If stay is not granted, any substantial injury may result, number 1. Then whether an application is filed in time. Number 2, whether application is filed in time. Number 3, whether he is ready to furnish security. These are the 3 conditions has to be looked into by the courts. Then not only the courts, the decree holder has to oppose the application and to take defense on these 3 conditions. There is no substantial injury to the JD. An application has not been filed in time. Application is belated one, namely the appeal is filed with Section 5 application, or setting aside application has been filed with Section 5 application if it is filed before the trial court under Rule 5, Sub Rule 2. Then direct the JD to furnish security for the suit claim or AEP claim also. These 3 conditions has to be fulfilled by the JD while seeking stay before the whether it is trial court which passed decree or the appellate court. Then Rule 5, Sub Rule 4, it says that Rule 5.3 is applicable to Rule 5.2 also. That means it is applicable to trial court or the court which passed decree also. Then Rule 5, Sub Rule 5. There are 5 sub rules in Order 41, Rule 5. 5 Sub Rule 5. If appellant failed to make deposit or furnish security, the court shall not grant stay. If he failed to deposit the amount specified by the court, whether it is the appellate court or the trial court, or failed to furnish security, the court shall not grant stay. This is the 5. This is the ingredients of the 5 rules. Then Atmaram Properties Private Limited versus Federal Motor Private Limited. In this case, Order 41, Rule 5.3, when it is applicable to Order 41, Rule 5, Sub Rule 2 is clearly explained. It is held that it is a discretionary power of the court which passed the decree that whether stay has to be granted or not, considering the relative hardship, and even security can be ordered for granting stay. This is the only citation I want to cite. Then next provision is another interesting provision, Order 41, Rule 6, security in case of order for execution of decree. This will also contain 2 sub rules, Order 41, Rule 6, Sub Rule 1 and Sub Rule 2. Rule 6, Sub Rule 1 says, when an execution proceedings is pending and the JD also preferred an appeal as against a decree, the trial court, or on the direction of the appellate court, the trial court may direct the JD to furnish security. This provision directs the trial court to furnish security. Trial court to direct the JD to furnish security based on the direction given by the appellate court. Rule 6, Sub Rule 1. Then what is the Sub Rule 2? When an execution proceedings is pending for sale of the sale or sale of immovable property, the words sale or an immovable property is not available in Rule 6, Sub Rule 1. It is a general provision. When execution proceedings is pending and the JD execution proceedings filed by decree holder is pending, JD filed an appeal which is also pending, and he filed an application for stay, then the appellate court may direct the trial court to get security from the JD. That is the understanding. Then under Rule 6 sub Rule 2, when an execution proceeding is pending, which is filed by the decree holder, in respect only for sale of an immovable property. Here two words have been inserted: sale and immovable property, not immovable property. Then JD also preferred an appeal as against a decree. Now he filed an application before the executing court, not before the appellate court. This is the difference. He may file an application before the executing court, and the executing court shall stay the sale on the terms as to giving security, or otherwise the court thinks fit until the appeal is disposed of. If the two conditions are fulfilled, namely it is the execution for sale in respect of immovable property and the appeal is pending, the executing court shall stay the proceedings. No discretion can be exercised by the executing court until appeal is disposed of, or otherwise it takes fit. Then along with this Rule 6, Order 41, Rule 7 is also relevant, I feel. Why? If the JD is the government, then no security to be required from the government or a public officer in certain cases. You may also refer to Order 27, Rule 8A, which is also deals with the similar provision. If a government is the JD, the court cannot ask to furnish security. This is the point. Then the judgment debtor may file an application under Order 41, Rule 6.2 before the executing court, which has on security being furnished before the execution court, being furnished by the JD, stayed the sale of the immovable property. Under 41 Rule 6, the court which passed the decree can also stay the execution of the decree passed by the court if it is brought to the notice that an appeal is pending against the decree and the judgment of the trial court. Thus, this provision can be used before executing court or before the court which passed decree also. Two courts with this application can be applicable. Then what is the difference between Order 41 Rule 5.1, which we have already discussed, and this provision Order 41 Rule 6 sub Rule 2? The exercise of appellate jurisdiction under Order 41 Rule 5.1 is a discretionary. I have already referred. It is only a discretionary relief. Rule 5. Appellate court has necessarily to take into that connection the relative hardship involved to the parties and such other factors as may be regarded to be relevant. The court has to see the relative hardship while granting the stay. No such elements are, however, to be found contained insofar as the Rule 6.2 is concerned. It is missing in Rule 6.2. The execution court has only to ascertain therein that a sale recovered in execution is of immovable property and that there is an appeal pending against a decree of which execution is sought for. The mere pendency of appeal is for the purpose of Rule 6 to make enough ground for stay of sale of immovable property, whereas Rule 5.1 contemplates in express terms that mere pendency of appeal does not amount to stay of execution. The execution court has, of course, to obtain the security under Rule 6.2 in order to be able to exercise powers thereunder. But subject to all this, the grant of stay by executing court thereunder is mandatory. Embassy Hotels Private Limited versus Benjamin, proprietor of Nirmala, 2008, 2MLJ 1219 is the relevant citation which differentiate the Order 41 Rule 5 with Order 41 Rule 6 sub Rule 2. Then next provisions, Order 45, appeals to the Supreme Court. I am not so conversant with these three provisions: Order 45 Rule 11, Order 45 Rule 13, Order 45 Rule 14. I have also searched no relevant citations also in this regard, but with the little knowledge I have given certain points to understand these three provisions. There are three provisions in under Order 45 in respect of appeals to the Supreme Court. Under Order 45 Rule 10, while admitting an appeal, but before the transmission of the copy of record, the security shall be furnished under Order 45 Rule 7 for certificate from the Supreme Court. This is the provision under Order 45 Rule 7 under Order 45 Rule 10. If such a security is not adequate, then first Supreme Court directed to furnish a security for so amount. The said security is not adequate and further payment is required. For what purpose? For the purpose of translating, transcribing, printing, indexing, transmitting the copy of the record, the Supreme Court may order the appellant to furnish within a time to be fixed by the court or other and sufficient security, or to make within like time require payment. Thus, the Supreme Court may direct to furnish additional security also. Where the appellant failed, here the stay application comes. Where the appellant fails to comply with such order, the proceedings shall be stayed under Order 45 Rule 11. The appeal shall not proceed without an order in this behalf of the Supreme Court. But in the meantime, execution of the decree appealed from shall not be stayed. See the difference between the proceedings before the Supreme Court, namely the appeal before the Supreme Court shall be stayed, and in such a case, the no stay shall be granted to stay the execution of the decree which is pending before the executing court. That is the difference in this provision. This is the Order 45 Rule 11. Then Order 45 Rule 13. Power of the court pending appeal. Now appeal has it is not in the admission stage. Appeal has been taken on file. Notwithstanding the grant of certificate for the admission of any appeal, the decree appealed from shall be unconditionally executed unless the court otherwise directs. Thus, the decree can be executed unless the Supreme Court otherwise directs. The Supreme Court may, if it thinks fit, on special cause shown, impound any movable property in dispute or any part thereof, or allow the decree appealed from to be executed, taking such security from the respondent, or stay the execution of the decree appealed from, taking such security from the appellant. Thus, here that the provision under Order 45 Rule 13 comes. Stay the execution of the decree appealed from, taking such security from the appellant. After taking security from the appellant, the court may stay the execution proceedings pending before the executing court. The order shall be passed by the Supreme Court, not the executing court. Then or place any party, if the condition is not complied with, let's go place any party seeking the assistance of the court under such conditions, or give such other direction respecting the subject matter of the appeal as it thinks fit by the appointment of the receiver or otherwise. Thus, the place any party seeking assistance of the court under such conditions, or give such other direction in respect of the subject matter of the appeal by appointing a receiver or otherwise, the Supreme Court may direct. This is the understanding of Order 45 Rule 13. Then Order 45 Rule 14. Increase of security found inadequate. First, we discussed Order 45 Rule 10, a security to be furnished. And Order 45 Rule 11, security, additional security, Supreme Court can direct to furnish additional security. And if it is not furnished, then stay. Then now, under Order 45 Rule 14, increase of security found inadequate, where at any time during pendency of the appeal, the security furnished by either party appears inadequate, the Supreme Court may, on application of the other party, require further security. If security is not furnished, on the application of the opposite party or respondent, the court may stay the further execution of the decree and restore the parties to the position in which they respectively were when the security which appears inadequate was furnished, or give such direction in respect of subject matter of the appeal as it thinks fit. In such a conditions, if additional or increased security has not been furnished, the Supreme Court may grant stay of the appeal proceedings pending within itself. Then the 18th stay application in CPC is under Order 46 reference, Order 46 Rule 2. The court may pass a decree contingent upon decision of the High Court. Now, before going to the stay application, let us see what is Rule 1, Order 46 Rule 1. If the court has any reasonable doubt or any question of law while trying the suit or appeal or executing the decree, either of its own motion or on the application of the either parties, draw up a statement of the facts of the case and the point on which doubt is entertained, and refer such a statement with its opinion on the point for the decision of the High Court. Thus, if any doubt, the word used is reasonable doubt, not all doubts arising during the suit or appeal or executing. It must be a reasonable doubt. If there is a reasonable doubt or any question of law to be answered, then in such a condition, on application of either parties or the court on its own motion, draw up a statement of facts of the case and the point on which doubt is entertained, and refer such a statement with its own opinion. And the court also state his own opinion, and then submit the same to the Honorable High Court for seeking, praying for a decision thereon. This is the Rule 1. In such a situation, now assuming that a statement or a reference has been made, submitted to the Honorable High Court. In such a condition, the court which referred the question of law or doubt may either stay the proceedings or proceed in case notwithstanding such reference, and may pass a decree or make an order contingent upon the decision of the High Court on the point referred. Thus, the court may either stay the proceedings till the advice is given by the Honorable High Court, or proceed with the case, and may also pass a decree notwithstanding such a reference also. Then another point to be noted in this provision, but no decree or order shall be executed. A decree may be passed without receiving the advice from the or directions from the Honorable High Court, but no decree or order shall be executed in any case in which such a reference is made until the receipt of copy of the judgment of the Honorable High Court upon the reference. Thus, if the answer is not provided by the Honorable High Court, the said decree shall not be executed. Then another doubt may arise. The reference made by the court is on the administrative side or on the judicial side. If the reference is in respect of the particular case, it has to be submitted to the Honorable High Court through judicial side after making a note in the docket sheet or a separate letter. On the judicial side, a letter has to be submitted. If it is not in a particular case and a judge has a doubt, then on the administrative side, the court may submit the letter for reference. If it is submitted generally, then it has to be submitted on the administrative side. Then I think I have covered all the 18 applications. Now you may ask. Your brother said 19 applications in CPC. What is the last application? My advice is, if the 18 applications are not suitable to your facts and circumstances or the case, then my advice is use section 94E read with section 151. 151 is the inherent powers of the civil court under CPC. If no relevant provision is available, these provisions may be used to file stay application. Or you may ask the example for application of these provisions. When it is also, the law is trite that when there is a specific provision, we cannot utilize section 151, namely the inherent powers. When no application is available, then we may use section 151. Then there are also citations that wrong quoting of provision of law is not fatal. Since I have explained all the 18 provisions, I think hereafter there will not be any doubt which provision to be applied. Then I'll say two examples to provoke your thoughts. For example, if a previous suit is for bare injunction and the subsequent suit is for comprehensive relief, you are aware that what is comprehensive relief? Under Order 2, Rule 2, you have to ask all the reliefs, that is comprehensive relief. You may also refer comprehensive policy. It will include the owner also. If it is only act policy, it will cover only third party. It will not cover the owner. That is called a comprehensive policy. Likewise, comprehensive relief, all the reliefs are the maximum relief you have to ask for when a cause of action arose or a suit is filed based on that cause of action. In such a situation, if a previous suit is already filed for a bare injunction and the subsequent suit is filed for comprehensive relief, then an application of section 10 is not applicable. We have already discussed, not applicable. Thus, comprehensive suit which is filed subsequently has to be stayed only under section 151, not under section 10. Section 10 is not applicable to stay the previous suit. Now you want to stay the previous suit, which is bare injunction suit. Now you want to try comprehensive suit, namely declaration and recovery of possession, or declaration consequential injunction. That suit has to be decided first, prior to that bare injunction suit. In such a condition, you may apply this provision, section 94. 94 is relates to a supplementary proceedings. No other explanation in it. Section 94E read with 151. Then number 2, orders passed by the executing court on merits. Assuming that an arrest has been ordered on merits, and attachment has been ordered, or sale has been ordered, salary has been attached, property has been attached, delivery has been ordered, execution of sale deed has been ordered. In such a condition, an order has been passed by the executing court. There is no provision in Order 21 to stay the operation of the order passed by the executing court. We have already said under Order 41, Rule 5, Sub Rule 2, under Order 21, Rule 26. Both provisions would not cover. That is why order passed by the executing court on merits, you may use this provision under section 151 under 94E. I think I have just throw a little light on the provisions for stay applications in CPC. I welcome. Are there any objections, corrections, or additions, latest citations to which I have quoted or subject I have covered? I welcome it. Thanks for patient hearing. Thank you, Mr. Vikas Ji.
I would say it was not some light, it was more like a sunlight, that we have been able to gauge the entire gamut of the stay application under the CPC. Invariably, they say that 482, 226, and 151 a panacea for all solutions. Wherever you do not find, just incorporate them. But what are the subtle differences between the two, between all these three, and what are the differences between the stay application sector? In 1 hour, you have covered in such a fascinating way that I'm quite sacrosanct that everybody has actually imbibed a lot of knowledge in this process. Yes, Raja. And the way Mr. Raja was sharing the citations, it shows that, as I say, in Hindi we say ek aur ek 11, so 1 and 1 becomes 11. So the both of you just worked in tandem, and we are all actually, words are short to express the gratitude in which you have expressed. Since we are running short, we can take the questions. The participants can pose the questions. What is the, though you have covered it, what is the stay provision for appeal?
Stay provision for?
What is the, under what provision the application for stay is moved? In an appeal.
In an appeal?
Yeah.
Under Order 41, Rule 5. Under.
I'm saying, Mr. Raja, if he wants, he can, we can unmute
yes.
him so that both can simultaneously answer.
Yes, yes.
Yes,
No,
yes, you will continue.
He will also able to answer all the questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Under Order 41, Rule 5, Sub Rule 1 is the relevant provision in which stay application can be filed before the appellate court.
okay. This is by Abhishek Sharma. If one defense is struck off and one is ex parte, what provisions should be followed to conduct their witness or statements to be admitted? Is there any provision?
I think question is not clear.
Okay.
Ask him to speak, sir. We will answer.
If they want to examine the party who set ex parte, they can very well file application under section 151 and get permission and examine the person who was already set ex parte.
This is by Advocate Runa.
Yes,
Is there
under Order 16? Under Order 16, he may file an application to examine the one of the defendant also if he is not the contesting defendant.
This is by Advocate Runa. Is there any citation or ruling on the point that in the absence of any substantive evidence with regard to the disposing of the property in dispute by the defendants during the pendency of the suit, the plaintiff's affidavit supported by some other witnesses supporting the contention should be considered as sufficient for temporary injunction since the plaintiff resides out of India and is not able to produce the copy of the sale deeds at that particular time? Or what is the remedy in such a situation?
So with respect to temporary
Mr. Raja, probably you will have to come slightly closer to the mic.
Yes.
The audibility is an issue.
Keep it in hand, Raja. Raja, keep it in hand.
Yeah,
Keep
better.
your mic in hand.
Yes. In the absence of any document, plaintiff is not entitled to temporary injunction. The case is if plaintiff is residing outside the India, then the plaintiff can very well apply for certified copy of the document and produce the same at the time of trial. In the absence of any document, plaintiff is not entitled to temporary injunction. They have to prove the prima facie case. Without any document, they cannot prove they are not able to prove the prima facie case. So she is not entitled for temporary injunction. Yes.
This is by this thing. Whether a stay application can be filed in an MACT case, which is a false claim, pending criminal case pending before the competent court, as in section 169 of Motor Vehicle Act, the MACT is considered to be the civil court.
False claim. Criminal
In a MACT case.
In MACT case is pending. False on false claim. Separate criminal case is pending in separate court. They can very well file application under section 151 CPC to stay the MACT case till the disposal of criminal case.
Okay. This is by so much thank yous have come that the questions have actually been pushed back. This is by Bhavan Thakuri. If the firm is functioning and registration is in process and any breach of contract happens in the firm, in such a situation in that situation, they cannot file any suit because they are not registered. So what is the way out?
Sir, all the parties have to be included. Like a individual suit, all the partners have to be joined as a plaintiff and file a suit against the contesting party, not in the name of the firm. If a firm is registered, then the suit can be filed in the name of a firm, representing by the managing partner alone. You need not implicate all the partners, rank all the partners in the cost title also. If the firm is not registered, all the partners have to be joined.
As a plaintiff.
Yes, as a plaintiff.
Okay. And do they write the name as a firm also or not? Because it's not
No,
registered.
not in the name of firm, as
No,
an individual,
but do they mention?
as a joint plaintiff, as individuals.
But do they give any passing reference to the firm? Because I am taking the question further on behalf of the question.
No, it is a precondition to file a suit. Registration of firm. It cannot be cured subsequently.
This is there any difference between status quo and stay order? What procedure should we follow to convert status quo to stay, if at all?
Salmaja? Soltoma?
Yes.
Yes. So, status quo means the same condition to be maintained. Same condition to be maintained as on the date of filing of the suit. The same condition has to be maintained. It's called status quo. But stay for getting stay, there must be an earlier order, whether it is injunction or any other order has to be enforced. That has to be stayed by filing an application. Status quo, not by filing an application for stay. While filing an application for injunction, temporary injunction, instead of granting temporary injunction, the court may, considering the circumstances of the case, pass an order to maintain the status quo as on the date of filing. That is the difference.
But invariably, we found that status quo lead to more litigation.
Yes, status quo. Sometimes it is against the plaintiff also. Sometimes.
No, I'm saying status quo invariably acts good for the lawyers, but it leads a lot of litigation.
Yes, yes.
As to whether the construction was there or not, whether
yes.
the property had been transferred or not. Even in the contempt, etc., I have seen. My experience is that it is very difficult to prove as who was actually who was beneficial. Status quo is just like more like in a lighter way. They say it's like a mediation. Both the parties are happy that they have got something.
Yes, yes.
Yes. This is. Mr. Raja can also read because invariably. Govind, an appeal shall not operate as the stay of proceedings before the decretal court, nor an execution petition is stayed for the same. But this can be stayed by the appellate court for sufficient reason. Is sufficient reason here is the discretion of the appellate court or is based on the specific facts of the case? What is your take on this?
Raja?
He has to be unmuted. Mr. A.S. Raja, unmuted. In fact, he mutes himself, then we have to every time mute him.
Sir, again.
Mr. Raja has to unmute himself.
Sir, repeat the question, sir, again. I'm searching the question in the chat box.
So he has to, Mr. Raja, you will have to unmute yourself.
Sir, please repeat the question, sir.
In fact, he has just closed the video also.
Some technical problem. Sir, question is in the chat box.
So I will take the question.
Yes, sir.
When written statement of the defendant had been admitted, but his witness and the cross-examination had not been done, which application can be filed? The last question on the screen.
When written statement of the defendant had been admitted, but his witness and the cross-examination has not been done, which application? Sir, it means when written statement of the defendant had been admitted, but his witness and cross-examination has not been done, which application? Why you have to file application? Is when no ex parte order has been passed, no need to file any application.
He has been ex parte.
He says ex parte.
Okay.
Ex parte. Then if the suit is pending for ex parte evidence, or ex parte order has been passed against one of the defendant and your client is one of the defendant, then Order 9 Rule 7 CPC is sufficient. Order 9 Rule 7 CPC. If the suit has been decreed as ex parte and which is not pending, then you have to file Order 9 Rule 13 CPC within 30 days. If not filed within 30 days, you have to file along with Section 5 application, Limitation Act.
Once you said, because invariably large number of people there, let's assume an appeal is dismissed for non-prosecution. I am taking a step further. What application do we file for getting it restored? Because invariably sometimes people file under Order 9.
Good. There are two stages. Number one, Order 9 Rule 9. And a suit is dismissed for default when the defendant entered appearance or filed written statement, or it is posted for trial or cross-examination, etc. In such conditions, the suit is dismissed for default. The plaintiff has to file an application under Order 9 Rule 9 CPC. If a defendant has not been appeared, it is in the service stage. Namely, someone has not been served on the defendant, or publication in paper publication has been ordered, or private notice has been ordered. In such a conditions, suit was dismissed for default for non-prosecution. Then Order 9 Rule 4 is sufficient. If it is filed within 30 days, even no notice to the opposite party or the defendant is necessary. Since the defendant has not entered appearance, an application under Order 9 Rule 4 is applicable without notice to the opposite party. Two applications.
Sir, if the defendants have a high status in society, irrespective that the stay has been granted, defendants are seen as property dealer shops to sell the property. Is there any remedy for the plaintiff in the suit which has already been in the suit where the stay has already been granted?
Suit stayed by defendants, or suit is stayed by suit is stayed by the suit is stayed. The defendants are.
I think it is more presumptive in nature, because if there is violation, then there is a contempt.
So why suit has been stayed?
No, he says. I think what he intends to say is that despite the fact that there is a stay, the parties are looking upon for a selling, because that is all presumptive. Until unless there is a third party right created, then only one can set the court into motion.
I think it is not stay. Injunction has been granted, I think. Injunction has been granted against the opposite party, I think.
So he says injunction has been granted
injunction has been
in
granted
favor of the party, and still they are looking upon the property dealers.
Then contempt under Order 39 Rule 2 capital A. Contempt application has to be filed for violating the order of the court.
So we can take this.
At the initial stage, we have explained what the difference between injunction and stay. Colloquially, the litigant may say that stay has been granted. I have obtained stay. It is not stay. It is only an injunction. For getting stay, there must be an order in force. Yes. Okay.
This is by Advocate Karan. Why and what for the securities to be furnished under Order 45? Appeals to the Supreme Court. Is there any law on this?
See, I have referred in my notes also for the reasons for the payment security, typing, transcribing, and printing, and other charges. Supreme Court is collecting charges. I am not familiar with Order 45 also. Provision says the amount has been collected from the plaintiff, namely the appellant, in respect of so and so work alone.
Thank you. I think since we invariably wrap it off by 1 or 30 minutes.
One more question. What is the provision for filing a reopen application? It is under Section 151. There is no separate provision. Under Section 151 CPC, a reopen application has to be filed. Recall, there is a provision. Order 18 Rule 17. Reopen, there is no provision.
Last question, since you have said on recall, according to you, where it has been explained, what is the difference between recall? Because sometimes you feel that there is no error on the face of it in the case law. I'm asking in general. Then one can file a review in a normal case, but sometimes you feel that there is no error on the law, but you want to file an application for recalling. So is there any provision for recalling? And under what provisions and what are the guidelines for recalling of an order?
See, he referred recall. He referred recall to recall the witness.
No, I am saying in general.
Recall the
I am saying in general.
general. Recalling. There is no provision in the CPC for recalling the order. Only setting aside the order.
No,
Setting aside the order.
setting aside will be by a superior court. But let's
yes.
assume for a moment
No,
that there is no error on the face of it, but you want to show to the effect that that order has become impossible for its execution because of the flux of changes. So review is not permissible because there is no either factual error nor there is error on law. There are two aspects for a review. But
Sure.
you want to highlight that the advent of time, certain circumstances have come into being, that the decree has become unexecutable because of the changed circumstances. So according to me, that should be a case where an application for recalling should be filed. Because review will not be there because neither there is remedy of there is no error on facts, no error on law. So recalling to apprise the court that these circumstances have come and law is to that effect that a court cannot compel to perform an impossible decree. So where is there any distinction between in the judgments which show that where recalling can be filed?
No, recalling means, to my knowledge, recalling means setting aside the earlier order. That is recall.
So, but review will not be. I'm saying review cannot be filed because there is no error on the face of
yes.
it, factually as well as legally. But due
yes,
to changed circumstances, that decree cannot become executable. This fact has to be apprised to the court because otherwise.
See this. Yes. Proceed, sir.
For that.
See, when you want to recall the earlier order, there must be circumstances. Why it has to be recalled?
That's what I'm saying. Because with the advent of time, it has become unexecutable because it is impossible to get it executed because of some changed circumstances.
Then, if it is unexecutable, then section 47 before the executing court, not before the trial court. If a decree has been passed under wrong circumstances, then it has to be challenged only before the executing court, not before the trial court. Only appeal is the remedy. When a suit is pending, suit or other appeal or proceedings are pending, when the order has been wrongly passed or other wrong circumstances, then you have to file an application stating the reason for why you have not participated in the earlier proceedings. Then you have to file an application to setting aside that earlier order only, not recalling order. There is, I think, there is no provision recalling its own order. Otherwise, under section 151. Under section 151, the civil court can do wonder, which is not available to the judicial magistrate.
I will unmute Mr. Raja as well,
Yes.
since we are closing for the day. He can come on the video itself. Thank you, friends, for joining us in these engaging webinars. Like today we saw, the insights given by Mr. Ravi and Mr. Raja were quite fruitful, and I'm quite sacrosanct the way they took us along to the 18 applications which are there under CPC and what is the remedy. So it was what we say normally in a lot of webinars, that just like a capsule can treat everyone. So capsule of the entire gamut of the stay applications has been given by both of them. I think every person who has participated, not only on the Facebook, but also on this platform, they would have a healthy mind for a healthy legal knowledge, which is our endeavor, like Mr. Ravi and Mr. Raja said. During these testing times, we have been taking all such issues which invariably would help the students, lawyers, and all ones. Tomorrow, we have, in this pursuit to that, we have what are the changes, etc. Specific performance of contracts, effect of the amendment of 2018. Amongst us will be Justice Sunil T. Thomas, a judge of the Kerala High Court. So kindly do stay connected with us. And before parting, I would like Mr. Raja also to be unmuted because we want to express the gratitude on behalf of Beyond Law CLC to the effect that they have given us, both of them have given insights on a topic which is fascinating, not only for students, but also for the lawyers, as well as the judicial officers. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Raja.
I will forward the I will forward the notes to circulate to all of them.
At least the judgment parts, once they are shared, the
No,
students
complete,
and everyone.
complete notes I will forward.
Thank you. Thank you. There couldn't be a better day. The starting of the week with studies and with the compilation of the notes is a fact which everyone will enjoy. Thank you, sir. And thank you, Mr. Raja, for all the insights. And thank you, Mr. Ravi. We have been connecting offside the platform also. You have been able to connect us with many people. Thank you for all the cooperation to Beyond Law Sales.
Very much.
Right. So thank you.